Good morning, everybody, and I hope you're well. Welcome to another session today on managing stress and building resilience in our communities and in ourselves. Today, we are going to be looking at this topic, and your opinions and contributions are valued today, and thank you for coming once again so we can explore this topic. So let me try and share my screen. Can you see my screen? Okay. So on here, we've got stopping stress. You can see stress being cancelled out on there, and it just tries to show us that we should try and relax. So I think today morning, we were just discussing with some of my colleagues in the office, and we're saying, what do we think of stress? And somebody said, it's something we experience every day, and it's something necessary to allow us to carry on with the daily activities, or, it's a compelling thing that allows you to do things that you were not putting you in an uncomfortable, slightly uncomfortable situation. But the problem also comes in is when stress becomes bad, or it affects us, and we're looking at different types of stress. And I came across, you have acute stress, episodic acute stress, and chronic stress, I would say. And it just depends on when stress becomes a problem. And I think James will explore more on those as we go through. Now, on our pictures today, we have Happy Africa Day, which was yesterday. I just wanted to share that with people as well. And it's just a day to celebrate Africa as a whole. And I think from Africa comes a lot of things. And so we just thought today it was a good day to wish each other a Happy Africa Day. And I'm sure we also benefit from Africa in all different sorts of ways. Today we're eating some tangerines and said, oh, actually, they're from Africa, they're from Kenya, which is really good. So just to put that on there. But back to our topic today, you can see somebody hatching over, and you can, he feels like the weight of his work perhaps is on his head, and he's crying out for help. So we're going to look at ways we can manage stress and which is the best way to approach it. So we have different ways you can manage your stress in your life. And this could include meditation, which includes deep breaths, exercising, just get moving. That could also be dancing. As long as you're just walking, just get moving. Just getting moving in any shape or form. Time in nature, so relaxation, taking it all in and being present. Sleeping well, so that you can also feel recharged and refreshed for the next day. Connect socially, as we try to do as well, and by joining a club, also being here today to talk to one another and to each other. Eat well, reduce your caffeine intake. Make lists. When you make lists, I do make a lot of lists, and it helps me to prioritize my tasks, things I can do quite quickly, and things that sometimes might take me longer. It gives you that sense of achievement in a sense. So I'll stop sharing that. So welcome anybody who's new on this conversation. We normally just talk slightly about the topic at hand today, which is managing stress to build more resilience in us. And we normally do a few polls. The polls are a few questions, which helps us to aid in our discussion for today. So I'm just going to launch the polls, and I've got Ravina and Kasia with me today, who are going to be helping out to run the polls. So I'm just going to launch that.
Okay, so first question was, how common is stress in our lives? And everyone basically said very common. So does anybody want to say why they said very common? Well, stress is very common in our lives because it depends how well you deal with it. Like for me, stress is always there, and the way I'll deal with it is when I have certain tasks to do, I have to tick them off, or I'll just go for a walk, or I'll just speak to a friend if I'm stressed out. Does anybody else want to say why stress is common in our lives?
It's common for a variety of reasons, and I think sometimes as well people just don't realise that it's there, and people are always trying to push forward to do things and get things done without really realising that even the small things can create stress, because you're just adding more and more on and piling on more and more things. So all of those little things that you think are little things gradually build up to big things that add on top of what are bigger things. And then before you know it, you're more stressed than you need to be.
Yep.
So the second question was, as individuals and communities in general, how well do you think we recognize and deal with stress? So 20% said 90%, 40% of you said 50%, and 40% of you said 10% as well. So would anyone like to start sharing their thoughts on why they answered the way they did?
So I answered, sorry, sorry.
It's okay, it's fine, go on.
I answered with 10%, because like I was saying, like people don't always realise that what they're taking on can be stressful. Yeah. I mean, like myself, for example, with chronic illness and dealing with trauma and things like that, you know, I think, you know, I get told a lot, I need to rest, but I'm like, well, I've only done the washing up, I've only cooked the dinner, but that is still a level of stress. I'm still actively doing something that my body may not be ready to do, but because it's looked at as a day-to-day thing or something that needs to be done, it's therefore not considered stress. And I think that's how we end up in the cycle of being, I think we're stressed before we even realise we're stressed. And so then, but by then, that's why a lot of the time it's too late and it's a lot to come back from.
And it does pile up, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're stressed about being stressed as well, which is ironic.
Yeah.
Annette, you want to say something?
It's just identifying what is stress and what is stressful. Because I think we all face some form of stress each day. But when it's become even more stressful, you know, that you're not able to cope with the things that would, for someone who's not under pressure for whatever, whether it's work or whether it's, you know, illness in the family or whatever is going on in your life. It may well be that, you know, you have dependents and people are depending on you. And if you are stressed, a situation arise with that person become even more stressful for you. And sometimes you don't recognize it, as our colleague just said, you know, it just little things and it builds and it builds. And you think, you know, how much more I'm having to do my best, and I'm having to try my best to do the task in hand. But within myself, you know, I'm on my knees, but I have to still find a way of doing it, and then it becomes overwhelming for some people. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have anything else to say? Doesn't have the hand up.
Yeah, Eva does.
Oh.
I'm just gonna put my volume up. Yeah, I totally agree with what Annette and Naisha is saying. I think it's how do you know that you're really, really stressed? And get me thinking about when you're in a stressful situation, how you feel. Like if you're about to take an exam, I know I used to get like really sweaty palms. And, you know, it's one of those things. Sometimes, as you said, Naisha, it's like you might not know how much you're getting stressed. But I think it's when it's continuous. Like I would imagine if something was happening and I still continued having sweaty palms, maybe because of tight deadlines of school over a long period of time, I'm sure you'd have some, some body physical manifestation of what's happening to you, but unless you address it. And also, I believe also what you do on a daily basis, because as you said, I think stress is there every day. It's what you do to make yourself relax almost on a daily basis. Because it's not, you have to be conscious about it. I can see Nyasha wants to react to what I've said.
Oh no, so not really a reaction, just something else that I hadn't thought of. That as sometimes as well, not being stressed can be stressful. So if you're used to living in a heightened amount of stress, like if you live in flight or fight, or that's how your life has been, it can become natural for your body to panic when you're relaxed because it's so used to being stressed.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Hello?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. And imagine, especially sometimes if you're doing, like, let's say, a really high targeted job sometimes, and you need to keep performing all the time, which keeps you at really high levels of stress,
Yeah.
which can also, if not like checked, can become worse unless you do something to keep counteracting it, Yeah, definitely. I don't know whether anybody else wants to share about how they feel when they're stressed. Is there any other physical, or how do they feel when they're stressed, and how do they try to manage it, and how does a community do it? I think one of the things I think as a community, especially with our talks on Thursday, I find them therapeutic, and I think they're stress relievers. I mean, you come here and you sometimes talk about what's been happening or what you observe. They're like, oh, actually, you have some reflection on what's going. So I think this, having a platform to share, is a stress reliever. Yeah, I'll pass it back to Ravina and Kasha.
Thank you for that, Eva. Annette, you want to speak?
Yes, I just want to say, just sharing sometimes when you become overwhelmed with a situation arise and you've already been stressed, and it's nice that you can, if you're able to talk to someone about it, someone who you feel you could trust if it's something really personal and you don't really want to share, personal things with others. But if you're able to, someone, a friend or a family member that you feel that you can talk to, and that, they're going to give you some form of encouragement or something, or try and put you on the right path, and say, help you to find tools to deal with the anxiety you're going through. And that's a good way, I feel, that help to release that stress that you're feeling. Because sometimes you blow things up, you think, what you think is really, really, awful situation. You can find someone else can sort of reassure you, even if you're trying to deal with it yourself, just getting that reassurance that you are dealing with it in the right way, or they may be able to give you some advice as how to go forward. Just another pair of eyes, really, and another thought, looking at the situation in another way, in another context, and it may help to release your anxiety or your stress that you're feeling at the time. So I do think to reach out, if you can have the right medium or have the people around you. I know it's not always possible. Sometimes people don't feel they have anyone that they can turn to be able to help them and give them that little bit of guidance or reassurance. You know what, you're doing a good job. It's maybe difficult, but you're doing the best you can do at this time. That sometimes I feel can help.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, so But for me, when I'm stressed, see, I have two different ways of trying to deal with things, because I've had to learn to live an unstressed life. But I'm always also someone who goes and goes and goes and goes until I burn out, which I'm still trying to get better, still trying to get better with. So sometimes when I'm stressed, I like to keep busy. And then other times when I'm trying to go the other way and try to be relaxed and stuff like that, my body's not ready to do that. That causes me anxiety. And so then I have to revert back to things that I used to do, like keeping the TV on at night to help with the overthinking, so I can hear the list, so I'm focusing on the TV rather than what's going on in my head. And so it's about, for me, and because I've dealt with things a lot by myself, it's knowing what works for me at what particular time and knowing what and when to put it into place.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Thank
I
you.
I really agree with a lot that you said as well. Because when I get stressed, there's like different ways that stress happens in my body as well. And like one of the ways is that like I get quite like paralyzed, like I don't know, I can't really like do anything because it's like so overwhelming and it's like so in my head.
Yeah.
And then it starts like building up and I get stressed for being stressed.
Yeah.
But because it's like a cycle that I'm like kind of inactive because I'm paralyzed from this stress, but I'm stressed and I can't really do anything to kind of get out of this cycle. So for me, it takes me some time to kind of acknowledge that and be like, right, so this is what works for me. This is what I need to do. This is how I'm going to get out. But it's like, it's different every time. Yeah.
So I think when you're like that as well, and you know you've got things to do, you're adding to the stress by being annoyed with
absolutely,
because you're not doing. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Do you journal?
Yeah, I do. Sometimes it's harder than like when I'm really stressed. That might be when I don't journal so much, but I try. Yeah, I know it helps me. Do you do that as well?
Yeah.
It's a good tool because it like gets everything out of your head, and it's what Eva mentioned at the beginning with the slideshow as well. It's like making lists. That's kind of like getting things out of your head onto paper, or making your stress physical so you can kind of deal with it one step at a time.
Yeah, because it's like a release of your emotions, and that's why they say you should try to write rather than to type, because it's the flow of energy with your thoughts and your body onto the paper, and then once you've closed the book, it's kind of away then, and then you could able to process it a different way later on.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you. Yeah. Should we move on?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Nyasha, because I know you talked about journaling and the journey. I know it helps you with your stress, and I know you've written some really nice books. Is that where your passion came from? Like through journaling, then got you writing? If you don't mind.
No, do you know, I did it the other way around. I mean, I used to keep a diary years ago, and then someone I met, like the relationship got very violent, and these are things I used to find and react to. So I stopped everything like that. And then I was trying to write my autobiography, and then my mind was distracted by poetry. So then the story was turning into poems. So then that's how I ended up publishing my first book, because then by then I'd had enough. And then I published 2 more poetry books before I even still got round to writing my autobiography. And now it's only recently, in the last maybe 2 years, I think, that I've really got into like journaling. And because it's even as well in the like, it doesn't have to make sense, journaling either. You don't have to sit and write sentences. You can write these random words and doodle and scribble and whatever. And then, because that's the like the first layer of getting out whatever is going on, and then you move down to the next layer because you process the things differently at different times, and releasing one set of things gives you a chance to process a different set of emotions. And yeah, it goes through like that. So sometimes you're working on the same problem but in a different way every time, until then it becomes eradicated.
Oh, yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, I like the fact, I think pen to paper is very powerful. I think
Yeah.
this is really, sometimes the problem might be bigger than what is when you put it on paper and see it, and you're like, oh, maybe I can tackle it this way. Yeah, but thank you for sharing that.
That's okay.
And yeah, congratulations on your wonderful books as well. Yeah. Anybody else who wants to share before we go to watch a video? Yep. Okay, so we're just gonna watch a small video, which is gonna aid our conversation for today. Hopefully I should be able to share this. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Stress is usually seen as something we need to avoid. This is not true. We need stress, and we need our body's stress hormone cortisol to rise and fall throughout the day. Stress helps us wake up in the morning, helps us focus, learn, and remember new things. It's when people experience too much stress and start having difficulties coping that stress becomes a problem. High levels of stress can disrupt the natural changes in the body's stress response system and start to affect our physical and mental health. Over time, accumulated stress can result in false FFF response activations. When trying to measure our stress tolerance, the bucket analogy can be helpful. Our stress tolerance, or the size of our bucket, is a product of our genes, personality, and life experiences, and its size varies from person to person. The water in this analogy is the combination of all the stress in your life. We use the coping strategies we have available to keep our bucket from overflowing. They are like taps that allow water to drain from the bucket. Stress can include training, work, school, relationships, finances, moving, changing jobs, or the loss of a loved one. Both positive and negative experiences will affect the water level. A big bucket can hold more water or stress before it overflows. With a smaller bucket, less water is required for the water or stress level to become critical. While you can't change the size of your bucket, you can make life adjustments to reduce water coming in. You can also learn new coping strategies and stress management techniques to allow water to drain out. Mind tools, exercise, quality sleep, relaxation, and sharing your feelings with friends are some examples of effective water taps. Staying up late, sleeping in, drugs, inactivity, procrastination, suppressing or ignoring problems are examples of unhelpful coping strategies or false taps. They might give temporary relief, but actually result in water flowing back into your bucket. This video was created by Brave.
Thank you for that. I hope you all were able to see the video on the stress bucket. I wonder whether anybody wanted to give us a reaction to the video, what they thought about it. I think it just reiterated more on what we've been talking about and how to release stress. Naisha, I can see you.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I like the different analogies there, the way they did that. But also as well, I think sometimes we have to be careful about saying that people aren't coping, because sometimes that is people's way of coping. Like, I'm a really big procrastinator, but I still get things done. It's just the way I know how to deal with things.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, overall it was good.
Yeah, definitely. People would deal with it differently. Procrastination, I think I'm with you on that one as well. As long as you get the work done.
Yeah.
In some situations, I think it's important because I think it's the thought process that goes behind it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, but different things. You just have to, as you said, you also have to be aware. Different changes causes different stress. So moving house, changing jobs, like small things, we have to keep adapting to the small change that we see in our lives. I mean, temperature change, weather change, for some people can be really stressful. Well, I enjoyed the sun. I don't like it when it gets to winter. Nothing much I can do about it. But yeah, we need to watch our stress buckets. And I like the fact that also people have also bigger buckets and other people have smaller buckets. So you have
Yeah.
to know the limits, like know how much stress you can actually carry or not carry for that
Yeah.
case. Yeah.
And that's true. That's like the weather affects my illness as well. So like yesterday there was a big drop in the weather, and how much that changed had a really big impact on my body.
Yeah, it does. I can see Cicely also wants to thank you for that, Natasha. Cicely?
Yes, I love the conversation so far, and the analogy of the bucket speaks to all of us, and it's just nice to see that visual expression of it. I also like the fact that we are linking this to the African Day yesterday, the celebration. And if you think about it, the African Day or the celebration of it is behind, many men and women who had to go through very stressful experiences for it to be where, for us to be celebrating it today. And so this links up to the things that we have to do every day, and where we find ourselves, or when we find ourselves so stressful, and the worst case scenarios being, breaking down for what we have to do. So I like the idea of, journaling or putting things down or putting a pen to the paper, because that's one of the ways to manage the stress that we have to go through, given the many things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So think about the bucket and how you have to, how empty it. Journaling, as been mentioned, is one of the ways to empty that. But how many of us think of that when you're going through stressful moments? But we even know we are going through stressful moments. That's the biggest question. So the acknowledgement of that is quite important, because you could be breaking down when you're thinking you're doing what you have to do because you are under pressure to deliver or to do it. So very, very useful a video clip there with the analogy of the bucket.
Thank you for that, Cicely. Anybody else who wants to give their reactions to the video or for the topic of today, which is on managing stress, so they can share how they manage their stress, how they discover stress? No, okay. So I'll bring Kasha back in, and Ravina. We have some at the hub here where we are, which is on Oxford Road. We do have some activities coming up next week. So they have shared something in the chat, but I'll let them just explain to us what is happening in next week.
Hi everyone. So we're just going to pop a poster in the chat. I think, is it sent now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're organizing 2 events next week to celebrate the Jubilee. We've got one event on Tuesday, the 31st of May, and that's going to have a fashion show, some art activities, and some spoken poetry. And that's from, is that 12 to 2 or 11? I should remember this.
I should remember this. We'll just double check. Give me a sec.
Yeah, 11 to 2. And on Tuesday, just to add, we're partnering with the Christian Community Action. So there'll be some clothes that will be on sale on that day, and any donations are welcome as well. But all of the money raised will go to them. And then on Wednesday, hopefully the weather is good. I think it should be. So the Wednesday 1st of June, we've got a sports day in Kensington Park, and we're going to have like music. It's going to be a barbecue with halal meat, and we're going to have some stand-up comedy then as well. So you're all invited. Hopefully see as many of you there as possible. But yeah, share with anyone that you know as well, please. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you for that, Kasha. I've also put on the chat, we have our gender-based violence training that's coming up on the 10th of June. Please do email me if you'd like to be part of that training, or drop me a private chat during this session today, and then I can book you in. And that's going to be from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we want to do this valuable work to create champions in our society and in our community, to create more awareness in our communities about gender-based violence and how to stop it, and what to do and how to signpost people when we see it happening. Just to empower our community, because this is very important as we try to tackle the health inequalities that we talk about. Because I usually say we in the society have have the answers within us, and we're also capable of helping our community to be better, to see better people in the future. Sister Cecilia has also added, there is also an added book forum today from 6 to 7. I will send out the links to that as well. So please do come to that if you'd like to be involved in the book. And then usually, I think they have a book and we discuss it every month. It's quite nice, you should come to that. I don't know whether James is with us today. Yes, I've seen James. James, you're there. Hello, James. Shall I bring you in to just talk to us more about stress and how we can manage it?
Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. And I hope everything is going according to plan. I've listened to so many valuable comments and in terms of how we deal with stress. To begin with, it's really important for all of us to understand. We start with a timeline, because we normally talk about cavemen, for some people who perhaps went through that generation, they will probably relate to the caveman or caveman analogy, where somebody went hunting and was confronted by cyber tiger, and we understand the whole mechanism in the body and what he or she did, and running away or fighting or flight and all. Those kind of statements we've been hearing a lot. Even today, we have the same mechanism. In fact, evidence suggests that we carry tension in our bodies, and we do that because we prepare ourselves for any threat that might be coming up. So that little tenseness that we have is good for the body. It's only when it goes beyond the limit normally, and that limit also can vary from person to person, gender to gender, age to age, so we all cope with things. And I think when Cecily was talking about the African Day, which was yesterday, and she mentioned about all those who probably put a lot of plan together or fight or what have you for freedom and what have you. It's really about how difficult it was for them, but at the same time, how they were able to connect with the stresses that were triggered by whatever activity. And we really need to understand that stress level is there for us to tell us that something is happening, and we need to really perhaps look at it and see what we can use to perhaps minimize the effect on us. I think from all the evidence that people have mentioned today, they did talk about how we look at all of these things. And when we look at recapping that, I really want to look at thoughts that are always going to make us think and feel and do things. So there's a relationship between those three components: the thinking, your emotions, what you do, and also the body itself. So we have those four mechanisms. I think a lot of people mention about your body begin to react to your situation or what you're thinking about in your head can also cause us a lot of stress. And the stress bucket analysis is really powerful, isn't it? I mean, we look at the different sizes, the different timeline and all of those things. It's really important. And it's really also important for us not to minimize the presence of stress in our life. Just because that is how we cope, it doesn't mean it is really going okay for us, because we need to. Because if we don't take time to look at it, it's really that stress bucket you allow it to fill up, you know. So coping with stress is important, but also recognizing that trigger is also quite important. So that's why we come in with, you need to listen to your body, what the body is saying, and also those automatic thinking processes. And I would just like to add some of the thinking errors, you know, and in the end, I'll give some tips to take away. But we have about 9 thinking errors, according to psychologists, might be more or less, but I've decided to look at 5 today. The black and white thinking, you know, if you are in that category, if something is not this, it's not that, then you get lost. And that can actually trigger your stress level. And I want people to really recall a moment when they found themselves having to choose between 2 elements. And did that cause any stress, or was it easy? So it's just something to think about. And the next one really is when we blow things out of proportion, you know, and we say this to people or people say this to us. So just imagine when you are caught up in that type of situation, when you think that what they are saying is about you, or what has been said is about you, or maybe your diagnosis is really going to bring doomness to your life. It's going to consume you. It's going to really paralyze you. So just imagine that moment. How much stress did that trigger or generate? So it's really important to bear that in mind. And also we talk about mind reading, you know, and people might say, I'm not a mind reader. And people say, oh, you're reading my mind, you know, and it could be a very common dialogue with a friend, conversation, but some of this thinking can be quite serious with some people. It can really bring a lot of stress to them. When they think somebody's reading their mind, when they think somebody is misinterpreting what they are saying, it can be quite a very important thing. We might even explore this at work, in relationship, or everywhere we go. So it's really important to bear that in mind as well. And when we have that excessive attachment to rules and perfect standards, it can also bring a lot of issues. At the moment, our young people who are taking the GCSE, maybe parents are really kind of guiding them. This, you need to revise, you need to do this. How much are we putting pressure on them? How much pressure are they getting from us? So it's really important to be mindful of some of these things. We can do these things subtly. We don't need to understand them. We don't need to really recognize them, because what we call negative automatic thinking is very effortless. It's so quick, it's so immediate. Sometimes by the time you think it's there, it's telling you that this is it, this is the case. So it's really important for us to bear that in mind as well. And we can recall experiences or previous moments or situations where we become very attached to standard. This is how we do it here. You know, this is the way we do it here. And it can really be in families. You know, there are some beliefs in families that are really quite strong, you know, and they don't really make anybody to change it, you know. And that can also make things better. It can also bring stress to us. So I'm not saying either way, but when it's becoming more stressful and more impactful on your emotion, that's when you begin to really check out and see what is happening. And finally, for the 5 thinking errors, it's really when we take things personally, you know, and it can really cause us problems sometimes. And if you can recall the moment when perhaps you struggled with this, understanding whether it was you or not, or somebody's statement was meant to affect you, it's really important to see how that stress began to build up. And really, to summarize these 5 thinking errors, it's really important to look at how we can do that also culturally. You know, how do we think about some of these things? It might be a white psychologist that brought all of this together, but we also have a lot of this in our own cultural practice or belief system, and it's important for us to look at how we deal with stress as a family. How do you observe? How did you observe, or how do you observe your parents or siblings or somebody dealing with stress? So it's really important. And I think somebody mentioned that you don't really see somebody and see you're stressful. It's not about that. It's about the environment. It's about the changes in their behavior. If a friend is avoiding, if a friend is not doing what they used to do, and if we are observant, you may have opportunity to check, what's going on. Is there anything wrong? You're not really saying you are stressed, but it's really checking. And I think checking out with a friend, I think it's reasonably okay. You're not going to say you are stressed. Well, I've noticed that this is happening, but it's really about we used to attend the well-being hub. You no longer coming. What's has happened? Is there anything that's going on? What's going on in your life that is stopping you from coming to the well-being hub? And some of these questions can help people to begin to think that, hang on, I think people do care about me and they can actually help me. And finally, really, is sometimes we need to change and challenge our thinking. And I think I've heard about journaling or diary keeping, and some people were saying rumination or procrastination can be a coping strategy. It can also be a strategy can also distress you. So we need to look at rumination or procrastination differently in terms of what is the content? What are you ruminating about? Is it notorious? Is it chronic? Is it all the time happening? Or is it periodically happening and then there's a gap in between? So it's about the effect of that procrastination on you. That is the stress that we deal about. It's not the process, it's about the outcome. When you procrastinate, what is the outcome? If you're using it to work, is that taking any of your energy away? Is your sleep okay because your procrastination, or is it affecting your sleep? So all of these things have connection. That's why it's very physiological, and people mention about that. So for now, I would like to stop there, and then we carry on, and then eventually we might bring some resolution at the end.
Thank you, James. Thank you for that. I'll bring in Cicely.
Thank you, Liva. Thank you, James, for that comprehensive background information there. And as you were talking, I was thinking, I need to ask this question now that we have you. We have the privilege of having you in the forum, James. Now, how important is it we are aware of our stress levels? I don't know whether that asks the question directly or it's ambiguous,
Yes.
but how important is it?
Basically, the awareness of your stress level is just about the analogy of noticing how heavy your stress bucket is becoming. I think that awareness will begin to indicate to you that things are not going according to how they should be. Maybe there's some thinking that is not going accordingly, which we call unhelpful thinking. Any unhelpful thinking can also bring about emotions that are not quite good, which we call negative emotion. And if you have those two things already happening, then your behavior is going to be one of a stressful behavior, reacting rather than responding. And you will begin to notice that your body mechanism is becoming more and more towards the negative point, where we talk about tightness of your chest, tenseness of your muscles, sleeplessness, maybe eating more or less, sleeping more or less. And these are the reason why it's important to really begin to gauge at what level is your stress that you can actually cope with. It's just like cars. They all have speedometer. Some people might go 70, 60, or 40 or less, depending on the situation. But it's also about your gear, from gear 1 to 6. When are you going to 6? Is that okay? Is your speed higher than your control? Are you able to control that speed? So it's really about all of these. There's nothing to suggest that stress is bad for us when it is manageable. But it's when it becomes difficult for you to attend to other issues in your life. For example, we can look at long-term condition. Stress about it, what is it? Is it that your condition has stopped you from doing things that you used to do? But can you do little things that you can do and be happy about it? If you have a condition that is now stopping you from running the marathon or sprinting 100 meters, but can you walk for 30 minutes with that same condition? If the answer is yes, why not? That can actually help you deal with that stress. So noticing our stress is really vital. It can help us to cope effectively.
Thank you for that, James. And I just thought another question to you. In our African context, I don't think a lot of people are used to going for therapy. And you being a CBT therapist and talking, and people, I'm trying to think, at what point should people start accessing, let's say, therapy to deal with their small stresses? Because we don't want them to get to the end of the spectrum, then it gets to, mental illness, shall we call it. How do we encourage people from our community to seek therapy, and at what point do you think they should seek? I know you mentioned some of the things. I think you alluded to having sleepless nights, or you're doing something that's out of their normal habit. What would you say about that? When should they go, and how often? Or yeah.
Yes, Eva, that's a very good question that sometimes we normally don't engage with. And thank you again for asking a question like that, because this is some of the things that I am personally really very passionate about, is to really work with our community to be able to look at levels of stress and everything. When you are stressed doesn't mean you have a mental health problem. This is something that we all do have. If you look at what is happening in the world today, everybody's stressed. And if we look at the timeline since the pandemic, now we are about to say maybe the pandemic is gone, another one is coming, we don't know, but it's really about how much stress we gathered from there. And when we look at us as the BAME community in terms of therapy, we have a lot of protocols, procedures, a lot of support within our system, which I call the non-formal or informal therapy, from our moms, our elders, people in our communities, faith leaders, you name it. So these are the very first people we go to. But sometimes they also have limits, just like God also made me some extra support. And that's why you have your clinicians. I think some of the reason really why perhaps it's difficult for us is the language that is being used in the clinical setting. It's more a Western language. It doesn't really understand how we express stress. If I went to my GP and I have depression and say my mind is twisting, I'm old, I'm overthinking, they might begin to look at me as if there's something that's wrong with me. So instead of sending me to a psychiatrist or maybe a psychotherapist, they might even suggest that maybe you have a problem with your heart. If you say my heart is broken, so there are a lot of insensitivity around the language. And our religion also can help and also can debar us. Because some people might say, why should I go for help when my God will help me? And so having that, if I went to a GP for headache or anything, it's like I'm failing my faith. It's like, for us, most of us, not all of us here, but for some people, that helplessness and that God has got the answer for me can stop us from going to therapy. And also when we look at therapy from a long time now, the people you see there are maybe white, middle class therapists, and sometimes they fear that they might not even understand us. If we speak about our issues, it's quite important also. So there are a lot of elements there. And when we put all of this together, I think what we are doing here really is helping us to educate ourselves, because there's a lot of opportunity for us to change the order of the day. And I think we have that answer in our hands. And it's important to check out with your GP if things are not okay. Check with your your pastor if possible, but at the same time, don't forget that clinicians can also be vital. Because if we believe in the fact that God made all of us in his own image, I think scientists also are human beings. They were also made in the image of God. And maybe God is going through them to come and help you by doing the medication that perhaps you think you don't need. So it's important for us to even challenge our own thinking around our own religion. I'm a Catholic. I go to church every Sunday, but I also check out and ask God, I'm doing this. I want you to help me, rather than sitting back and say, God, help me with this, without actually taking that first step. So it's really important. I think I like this forum is educating us. So I don't know whether that answers your question, Eva, but
it did. And thank you for touching on very different elements, which normally concern a lot of people in our community, especially when it comes to the religious aspect of it. And I liked how you linked the two in getting, both benefits. I don't know whether anybody has a question for James in regards to stress, or how to manage it, or how you can access services as well. That's just an important one. I think he said first point is the GP, and then you can get referred. But if there are no questions, James, thank you very much for answering our questions. Shall I bring Cicely back in if you don't have any questions?
It's a question actually.
Oh, thank you.
For all of us, and for all of us, anybody can come in. But there is another angle to it, James, the religion, and I'm glad that you've touched on that. But the other angle is the natural therapy, the herbs, and, you are aware of them. And we tend to focus so much on that to deal with our health, mental health, I would say. You hear people say, well, if you're stressed, just go and have a nice bath with this with some herbs in the water, and that will help relieve that. And in many cases it has, but actually, should we be relying wholly on that, or there are things that we need to think beyond our natural herb usage of managing our health?
I think when we look at alternative remedies, they all have a role to play. It depends on really how we use them. In the African context, if you go into history, which I've done some research around it, even when we talk about consultation, actually came from an African context. There was a story where in those days, we're talking about maybe 4,000 years ago, when people used to go to herbalists to consult in terms of what's happening to them, So that's really where this whole consultation came from, because there are a lot of questions, who is in your family? Who is the head of your family? That's how the herbalists, we get to know what is happening in your life for them to be able to recommend something. So they will actually go to an extent to ask, do you know who hates you in your family? Do you get on well with your sister or your auntie? And some of these questions play role in our mind today, but in a different way. There are a lot of us that may consult people back home when we are in any situation that is causing us problem. We go back to that same story to check. Either uncles or aunties, and aunties are really very important in our lives, So, we all on this call maybe can recall that aunties are also quite important. They advise, they give opinion on wedding and all of those things. But to bring to your question, Cecily, in terms of using alternative remedies, some have scientific proof that they can actually work, just like the Western medication that we take. It's really about the quantity, because in an African context, we don't have any measurements. So it's really about either you overdoing it or underdoing it. So it's really important to know whether it's okay to take. And if we are taking it in combination with another medication, it's also important to check out with your GP as well to rule things out. But talking therapy, on the other hand, has got enough evidence to suggest that it can actually work from NICE guideline, which we work on anyway. And what we do in CBT is evidence-based practice. Whatever we do has got evidence. If people are not saying it's good, we don't do it. So there's evidence to suggest all of these things. But those remedies, really, we need to be very careful. We need to know whether they are toxic, whether they fit in with us or our own genes. So it's really important to know. And also the history. Have we used it before? Has anybody used it before? Because there are a lot of herbs, elements out there, and we just need to be very careful what we're using, what we put in our bodies. But exercise, activities, people have mentioned it earlier, documenting your thoughts. If you wake up today, how was your thinking? How did that make you feel? How did that impact on your reaction? So it's really important. So journaling can help us to really be on top of our daily activities or thoughts. So it's really good. But remedies are good, but we need to be a bit cautious.
Thank you for that, James. Any other questions at all?
Yeah, no, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say about the bathing and stuff like that. So for me, I have to mentally prepare to relax. And so having the baths with the candles lit and nice smells and things like that, that can help me mentally prepare, and the whole process of then getting ready to relax somewhere else. And, that can help me be ready for things like meditation and things like that.
Yes, definitely. I like my chamomile tea. I think it's nice and soothing and relaxing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Nyasha. Anybody else wants to share? I see Cicely has
Yeah, it would be nice to hear from everybody's views on this. And, James, I like the fact that you have taken us back to the consultation element of it, the origin of all these medications that we have. They have a lot of origin from the roots of the many African trees that we have. Again, that reinforces our need to celebrate African Day. And really, all that is to do with how we manage our well-being. Is the story of resilience, if you think about it. But
Right.
Going back to the question on how well, as communities, we really acknowledge there is stress around, not just to the wider community, but to the self, and then start addressing it. I feel personally, going back to the pause that we did, it's not something we do very well. And this is down to the stigma that we've talked about in the past. But you can see how wealthy we are in terms of information, but also the networks. We don't need to go far. We just need to learn from those who have gone in the past. The story of Africa, the story of resilience. And it's how we use that in our current communities to really support or manage our well-being. Let's hear what your views are.
yes, Annette, I can see.
It's just a talk about relaxation. I mean, my relaxation is every night I have to have a very warm bath. I feel so relaxed. And so once I've had my bath, I can just go to my bed and I just sleep. And I study sleep. And when I wake up, I feel refreshed. So no matter how late it is, I'm out and I come home, I've got to have a warm bath before I go to bed. And that just makes me sleep. So that's something I use. And especially if you have a stressful day, doing this or that, or other people's depending on you to do this or that. Yeah, I find that really helpful for me. So something to try.
Yeah, thank you for that, Annette. So I think it gives you that nice warm feeling of rewarding time for yourself.
Yes, that's my time, my relaxation, and everything else goes out, everything goes away. whilst I'm having that, and I can just go off to sleep, and I'm able to deal with that.
Yeah, it's your bucket for releasing your
Yes,
stress releaser, isn't it? And you do that on a daily basis, which is very, very important.
I do that every day.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I can see James has his.
Yeah, but just to step in a little bit from what Annette was saying, really, it's really important. And also was mentioned earlier on that before you relax, you need to really relax the mind, you know. And how do we relax the mind? And I was reading the book and we were talking about how do we get into our own company? So just imagine when you are in the company of your best friend, or maybe your daughter or relative, or somebody you really like in your family. How do you feel? Let's just think of that, you know. So how much time do we spend in our own company per day, you know? So if anybody can tell me, please, because sometimes the company we keep is very far away from us. And even in our own environment, and I think with the COVID, some of us were able to discover how dirty our, items are in the house, to spend some time in your bed, because before that it was really quite hectic and it was just touch and go, you know. But during COVID and we had to stay in, it became a bit easy for us to really look at the corners that we have in our homes, to be more in our own company. So it's really important to do that, even if 3 or 4 hours a day to spend just in your own company, just really zooming into yourself to know more of yourself, what you like, what's happening, how do you like it, and how you don't like it, and all of those things can really help us. So let's just imagine how many time do you spend in your own company. So anybody?
It's a good
one. Oh, we've got Chloe coming on.
Hi.
Oh, yes, Mary. Hello, Mary.
Yes, just answering James' question. Actually, I started doing this for quite a while now. Time for myself, you know. I'll just, when the sun is out, mostly I'll just get out. You know, yesterday I went into town. I met a friend, and then I decided to go to the train station. So I got myself tickets. Tomorrow I'm going out on my own to this new line, you know, Elizabeth line. So I'm just gonna explore the engineering and all this. I did speak to my uncle's wife. She lives in London, and say, "Oh, we could have gone together." And I said, "I'm not gonna wait for you because I don't know which day you're gonna be off, you know. So you have to decide really. You have to come first sometimes." So I'm really doing that for myself at the moment, because sometimes can be really stressful. Not only your own stress from back home, people are really suffering, your own family here, and all this is just like they believe that you can take everything and then they will be free. But sometimes these things weighs you down, you know. So I try just to make sure that I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mary. Yes, definitely. And enjoy your day out tomorrow.
I will do, definitely. Yeah, thank you.
It's gonna be good. I think I should adopt your policy of not waiting for people sometimes, because then you never get anything.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So we've got Chloe.
Hi. Oh no. So basically what I like to do sometimes is like I'll do this technique where I imagine like my perfect day when I was a child. So like and things that I find like the biggest memory trigger for me is smells. So I like really focus on how things smell. And just like really simplistic things, like maybe smelling all the clean washing and imagining what time everyone's getting up out of bed and like what we're going to do that day. And I'll just write it out as if I'm there and it's like a day of my life. And then, yeah, I usually do this in the bath actually, where like there's like lots of nice smelly things and I'm warm and I'm really present. And it'll just help me like ground myself and imagine myself in like a really happy, like perfect situation. And maybe like tell myself things that I wanted to hear that day like reassuring things from parents or something.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kerry. And also thank you for sharing just the simple things. I like that, smelling how the laundry is gonna smell. The dry laundry. Yeah, that's simple things in life. Yeah, thank you for that. I can see Lorraine, you put your hand up.
Good afternoon, everybody. I love what Mary said about, going out, jumping on the train and take a train ride. I mean, personally, I used to do that, but since COVID, I haven't been doing it. So that's something I need to start again. I love to go on long train ride, not for any particular reason, but just to choose a destination and go scouting. And that for me is relaxing because I can sit in the park. I can sit somewhere and enjoy the outdoors. And at home, okay, Saturday is my Sabbath, so that's a quiet day. I love my Sabbath. And Sundays, Mondays, I do nothing. Those days are for myself. I spend them together, and I love reading, so I do a lot of that. I love writing things down. And when I say write things down, I mean, now we're talking about stress, and I think that's why I was a bit distracted earlier, Ava. I'm sorry about that. I was doing stuff on, was going through my Bible earlier, and I looked for the text that relates to stress, oppression, and those are the things I feed on, say on Sundays, Mondays. Tuesdays, I go out and I spend, a lot of time out walking through town and observing different things. And that for me is relaxing. And then when I get back indoors, it's like, a quick shower and something to eat. And I jump on another Zoom program. On this program, I'm not sharing so I can relax through the program. At the end of the program, I talk to some of the ladies, encourage them. And that's my day, that's my evening. And on this Zoom program, it's like 24 hours, 7, but I only spend certain times with the ladies and so on. And I find it very fulfilling, and as for, I love the group setting, the Zoom group setting. And so, yeah, has become part of my life since COVID, and it's interesting. I enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Lorraine, and thank you for sharing what you normally do, and that's great, and also for sharing that these platforms are a good way of relaxing is also really, really great, and it's good to hear. Thank you for sharing. I can see Esther has her hand up.
Yes, just so much empowering to hear people's stories and small ways of how they relax and how they empty their stress pockets, because the reality is on a daily basis, we do experience little stresses, big stresses here and there until we feel our brain is not working. One of the things that seems to be really helping me is at the end of the day, I just walk to my back garden. I have a small garden which I plant the vegetables, especially now we have some nice weather. I've just planted things here and there, and even some things I've just put in containers, they grow. I walk to the allotment and I just walk around just to see how the vegetables, the things have grown. And that seems to be relaxing me. And I just, I forget the things that were just stressing me. So gardening, I found it something that relaxes me more than I used to think, because I take more time to connect with what is growing up and how it's growing up, and I see the beauty of it growing. And so that is one thing that has seemed to help me. And I want to say thank you so much to Mary and the other previous presenters. who have shared their little ways of just emptying their stress pockets. And I think it's quite useful when people come together and encourage one another, because it's more healthier and it actually enhances our well-being. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Esther. And yes, hopefully you'll be sharing some of your produce when they come up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else who wants to share about what they do to release stress or what they find useful?
Another thing I do is sing and dance.
Oh yes, definitely. I like to do dancing, especially with my kids, because it's so funny. Because it's like it just becomes comical.
Yeah.
which is a really good thing, you know, when you get into those child games and you're like, don't take yourself too seriously. You know, sometimes you've got to let loose a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Annette.
Yeah, I like to and sing. I love the folk songs, the Caribbean folk songs. I enjoy those. We used to do a lot of singing, but over the last couple of years, we haven't been able to do any singing, and I'm looking forward to when we go back to doing that, and enjoy the performing of the songs and the meaning of the songs that we sing. So yes, that's one way of I like to relax. And also, I know Esther just spoke about the gardening. I mean, it was lovely. I went out to my back garden because I wasn't able to mow the lawn, and I had to do a big cut out there last week. And it was such a difference when that was done. And then I got carried away. I did all the pots and getting all the plants in, and yes, and it's lovely to go out and see, you know, new life, see the flowers coming out. I can see that now, and that's really help you when you know, you go out and you put a smile on your face. You stop thinking about things that you have no control over, but it's happening anyway, and that's something that you have some control of, because you can look and enjoy. And yeah, so yeah, that's for me.
Yes, thank you for that. I think also, James, you can resonate with that. You do a lot of gardening. I've seen a few pictures of you doing some gardening. Is that one of your stress relief things that you do?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's really a way of releasing your stress, but also connecting with nature can be quite powerful. And I think it does really calm people down. And indeed, I do get a lot of calmness and some kind of good feel when I play with the soil and when I do my gardening. At the moment, I've just some okra, and I'm just waiting for them to come up, and then I will be transplanting my cabbages. So it's really a very vital part of us. You know, if you like, for some of us, we grew up on the farm, it's really important. And it was such a great moment, you know, when we used to just manage and submerge ourselves in the farm and do whatever, just like you do with your kids, you know, whether it's to distract them or yourself, but it's good, isn't it? That connection, that, you know, activity together can be quite helpful. Yeah. So yeah, farming or gardening is fantastic.
Thank you for that. I think one of the sessions we had previously, we're talking about the soil has good microbes, and that's why people love actually, you know, gardening. It's such a good therapeutic way of relieving stress, and also a feel-good factor. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. Unless anybody else wants to share, I just put on in the chat, we're having our annual conference meeting for Utulivu Women's Group. And this is going to be on the 10th of July at the Hilton Hotel from 1 to 6. More details to follow, but it just shows a way which we can, at least after COVID, we can all come together and actually be able to share together. And as we said, one of the stress management is to be able to connect with each other. So hopefully we should be able to have a physical meeting. It'd be great to have everybody there. And I can see Cecilia's come in to formally invite everybody. So thank you.
Yes. Yes, and especially after hearing from Mary going for the Queen Elizabeth, train trip. I wish I can join you, Mary, for that. But yeah, after the 2 years of being, isolated, I think it's best to look forward to the 10th of July at Hilton. Dress to kill, as we used to say. Come with your best and enjoy the Hilton environment. It's not only stress relieving, but also very, very connecting. And yes, it was very empowering to hear those natural and inexpensive ways of addressing stress. Gardening, the immunity that it brings. Yeah, Ravina didn't tell us a few weeks ago that there are those you just mentioned them there, Eva. They boost our immunity. So those very true and less expensive ways to manage stress will help us as individuals, but also as communities. And on that, don't forget our Friday drop-in, gardening drop-in at Atland Road. Always very open from 10 to 12 o'clock. Please come and make a walk, do your walk there as you interact with the nature. The dance, Annette, I can join you on that, and Eva, dancing. It goes a long way in really working out your body system. It reminds me of the seated exercises on Wednesdays. I mean, that goes a long way. It refreshes all parts of your body. And you can't really say much about that without experiencing it. Yeah. And on that note, I want you to go with the Haka community, the New Zealand. I'll put it on the chat. Haka. I did an opportunity of experiencing it this week. I didn't realize how much people's culture is important in addressing the stress and anxieties that we all go through. I just happened to be on an away day, and this Haka dance was brought by the New Zealand men, dance, which is almost like the African beats. So please have a minute and Google it, have an experience, because it will work on your stress, or it will help with your stress management. Otherwise, Eva, thank you so much for that. I'll pass back to you.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, Mary.
Yeah, Cicely, you say on the 10th, roughly what time is it, please? Thank you.
It's from 1 to 6.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. I think we're coming to the close. So lots of things happening soon. You've been told about the fashion show Jubilee event that's coming on Tuesday and Wednesday. That's going to be at the Hub, and some games on the Kensington Park, which is close to the Hub as well. And there's Saturday's a barbecue. Friday, tomorrow, there's a gardening project, as Cicely mentioned, that happens between 10:30 and 12:30. We've got a book forum today. I've tried to put everything in the chat, but please, if you want to get anything, you didn't catch anything, please do email me. I've put the email on there. But apart from that, I'm going to say thank you to everybody. And even as the Jubilee celebrations come through, let's all get ready to dance and enjoy and celebrate our queen, who's been on the throne for 70 years, which is remarkable. Yeah, and I can see Cecilia has posted the Haka New Zealand dance, which I have seen personally when I go for rugby tournaments, which is amazing. And how they draw into it, it's really wonderful. But yeah, apart from that, if anybody has anything, I think we're gonna go draw to a close for 4 minutes. I'm gonna leave the session open just for another minute for anybody who wants to say anything. But apart from that, I'm gonna wish you all a good afternoon. So thank you. And I'll try and get the Haka dance for whoever wants to get it. Thank you, Annette. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
And I think that should be okay. Let's just leave and now have a good week, and I shall see you next Thursday, I believe. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.